NASA just announced the Artemis III crew, and buried in the press conference was something much bigger than 4 names. The HLS Starship that flies on Artemis 3 is now based on a version 3 vehicle, the same version 3 that's flying tests right now at Starbase. That changes everything. Meanwhile, NASA announced the Artemis 3 crew and casually confirmed something I'd have not thought to be possible. My name is Felix, welcome to What About It, let's dive right in. Starship updates. Let's start with Booster 20, the next Starship booster to take flight. Inside a building at Starbase, its engines are being installed, and it's happening faster than anyone expected. Booster 20 rolled back to the production site on June 9th, finishing a clean cryo-proof campaign at Massey's. Cryo testing went well, no visible problems. The booster passed every checkpoint. Now it heads into engine installation where 33 Raptor 3 engines get bolted to the underside. More powerful and much easier to manufacture and produce than any Raptor engine before. Once engines are in, Booster 20 will be at the same readiness level as Ship 40, which is also receiving its Raptor 3 engines right now in Mega Bay 2. Both vehicles are converging on the same milestone at roughly the same time. After engine installation, Booster 20 heads to Pad 2 for the static fire campaign. After that, stacking, then Flight 13. Realistic timeline, 4 to 6 weeks. We're still in range of a late June launch if everything moves perfectly, more realistically early to mid-July. The pace is picking up. While Booster 20 was finishing up at Massey's, the You'll Thank Me Later barge made a trip from the Gulf Coast to the Cape. And it didn't show up empty. The barge delivered 2 transport stands to SpaceX's Kennedy Space Center facilities. 1 ship transport stand, 1 booster transport stand. No actual vehicle was on the barge this time. Just the ground handling hardware. This is the kind of move you make when you're preparing for the real thing. SpaceX needs both stands in Florida before they can roll a vehicle off a barge and move it around the KSC facilities. By staging the hardware now, they can run ground handling tests, practice the choreography, work out the logistics, all before an actual booster or ship arrives. Now let's pull back and ask a question that turns out to be surprisingly important. How many tanker trucks does it take to fill a single Starship? A fully fueled version 3 Starship and Super Heavy stack takes roughly 4,100 tons of liquid oxygen and roughly 1,125 tons of liquid methane. About 5,200 tons of propellant total. Let's focus on the methane side because that's where this story is going. A standard cryogenic methane tanker truck carries about 20 tons. So to deliver enough methane for 1 version 3 Starship launch, you need around 56 truckloads. Let me say that again. 56 trucks for the methane side of just 1 launch. Right now, SpaceX is doing roughly 4 to 6 flights per year. That's somewhere between 220 and 340 methane truck trips per year on Highway 4 for just the launches themselves before you count test fires, cryoproofs, and other fuel uses. Already a serious logistical operation. Now think about where SpaceX wants to be. The stated goal is launching Starship once a day. Let's just walk through what that would mean for methane trucks alone. 1 Starship per day means roughly 56 methane trucks per day on Highway 4, every day. That's a tanker arriving every 26 minutes around the clock. And we're not even talking about the long-term goal of 1 launch per hour. At that cadence, you would need about 1,350 methane trucks per day. 1 truck every 64 seconds. Now, at the oxygen side, which is roughly 4 times larger by mass. Then at the nitrogen, which is used to subcool the propellants on site to cryogenic temperatures. The fuel total, methane plus oxygen plus nitrogen, comes out to around 230 tanker trucks for a single Starship launch. 230 trucks for 1 rocket. For comparison, a Falcon 9 launch takes about 13 tanker trucks total. That's it. 13. Starship needs almost 18 times more propellant logistics than the rocket that already launches more than 100 times a year. And SpaceX wants to fly Starship far more often than Falcon 9. The full picture becomes physically impossible to sustain by truck. So SpaceX is doing the obvious thing, they're building a pipeline. This week, the story broke that SpaceX is finally planning a 16-inch natural gas pipeline running approximately 5.76 miles underground from the port of Brownsville directly toward Boca Chica. or Starbase. The natural gas will then be liquefied on-site, right in the middle of those two pads for use as Starship propellant. The Brownsville Navigation District Board unanimously approved authority to negotiate the assessment on May 20th. This is the first official step. What still needs to happen? Engineering, environmental reviews, federal, because the pipeline crosses wetlands and tidal flats, Army Corps of Engineers permits, and other regulatory approvals. So we are still early in the process, but the direction is clear. A 16-inch pipeline can carry a continuous flow of natural gas that completely eliminates the truck problem. No more 56 truck trips for every single launch. The propellant just flows from the port to the launch site, gets liquefied, and goes into the tank farm. This is what scaling looks like. While all of this is happening, the Pad 1 refurbishment is moving faster than I expected. We were up with SPI helicopters this week, and the progress on the ground is genuinely impressive. These aerial images are essential for my reporting. If you're down at Starbase, make sure to pay our official partner, SPI Helicopters, a visit and book a flight. The same views as our photographers get. It is unforgettable and worth every penny. Click the card or the link in the description. Help Why and Return. Check it out today. The large GSE bunker frame is now almost ready to be put in place. The flame trench walls are coming up with massive rebar cages reinforcing what will become very thick concrete walls. The amount of structural strength being built into this construction is insane. These rebar cages are massive. The concrete walls they'll support will need to take the abuse of 33 Raptor 3 engines firing on top of them repeatedly for years. SpaceX is over-engineering this, and that's exactly what you want to do. A few episodes back, we estimated about 6 months from assembly start to OLM lift. Watching this pace, that timeline is holding. Late 2026 for Pad 1 to be fully operational still looks realistic. Before we go over to the big news for this episode, let's talk about risk management. I mean, you've probably given your email address to hundreds of websites over the years. What you might not know is that brokers collect that information. Your name, phone number, home address, and more, all bundled and sold to whoever pays. Today's sponsor, Incogni, is here to help you take your data back from bad actors. After signing up, Incogni identifies brokers holding your data and sends removal requests on your behalf automatically. But here's what sets it apart. It doesn't just send one request and calls it done. Brokers are known for re-adding people after removal, so Incogni continuously monitors and resubmits requests to make sure your data stays deleted. And it actually works. I use it too. Your personal dashboard shows you exactly which brokers had your information and the status of every single removal. It covers hundreds of brokers across the US, the UK, and Europe, and even handles custom removal requests for you. So take your personal data back with Incogni. Use code Felix at the link below and get 60% off an annual plan. That is incogni.com/Felix. Try it out now and in return even help What About It. Now to the big story of the week. On Tuesday, June 9th, NASA held a press conference at Johnson Space Center in Houston, Texas. They announced the Artemis III crew. We'll talk about the crew side later in this episode. For now, I want to focus on what NASA said about SpaceX, the Starship HLS, and what that means for everything we've been tracking. And there is a lot to talk about. First, the mission itself has been restructured. Artemis 3 is no longer a lunar landing. The landing slips to Artemis 4, targeting around 2028. Artemis 3, targeted for somewhere in 2027, is now a crewed test mission entirely in low Earth orbit. The important part is that no propellant transfer demo is part of this mission. The propellant transfer demonstration is a separate Starship development milestone, not part of Artemis 3. The original HLS plan involved a heavily modified, purpose-built lander variant that would have looked quite different from the test Starships we've been watching. Now, the plan is to take a version 3 Starship, essentially off the production line, add an HLS-specific docking adapter, and use that as the Artemis 3 test article. Let me explain why that matters. First, the docking interface. Version 3 Starship has a PEZ dispenser payload door on the side of the upper section. For the HLS Pathfinder, that payload door area is where the docking port has to live, not on the nose tip, the way some earlier HLS renders suggested. And there is a really good reason. The nose tip of a version 3 Starship is already full of hardware: landing, header tanks, COPVs, other systems essential to a returning ship. There simply isn't room up there for a docking adapter on a V3-based vehicle. If you want to use a version 3 Starship as your HLS Pathfinder, the docking interface has to go where the structure can actually accommodate it. And that is the payload bay location. SpaceX has only recently started building this crew module edition. For Artemis III specifically, this HLS Pathfinder doesn't need to be a fully functional lunar lander. It doesn't need landing legs sized for the moon, it doesn't need full propellant capacity for descent and ascent, it just needs to dock with Orion in low Earth orbit and demonstrate the crew transfer interfaces work. That's an enormous reduction in development complexity. Here's another interesting aspect that comes with this change. Because this HLS Pathfinder is based on a version 3 Starship, in theory, it could survive re-entry and be caught at the tower, just like any other version 3 Starship. That has wild implications. A returning HLS Pathfinder caught at the tower gives SpaceX a vehicle they can inspect, refurbish, and potentially fly again. We don't know yet whether SpaceX will attempt a catch on this specific mission, but the architecture supports it. The same vehicle that proved version 3 in flight tests can now serve as the foundation for the HLS development pathway. This is a much smarter approach than purpose-building a one-off lander. SpaceX gets to iterate on the same hardware family, validate it in flight, recover it, and improve it. The Artemis III HLS Pathfinder becomes a natural extension of the test program that's already running. So, pulling all of this together, the Artemis III HLS being based on version 3 means SpaceX doesn't need a separate development track for the lander. The ships and boosters we've been watching get built at Starbase are the same architecture that will support Artemis III. The propellant transfer demonstration that will eventually validate the full HLS lunar landing capability can happen on version 3 hardware. The catches, the re-entries, the refurbishments, the lessons learned, all of that compounds. For Artemis IV, the actual lunar landing mission targeted for 2028, this consolidation buys time. The closer SpaceX gets to a mature operational version 3, the faster the full HLS capability comes together. Every flight from here informs the lunar lander. The Artemis III restructuring is being framed by NASA as a risk reduction step. From SpaceX's side, it's also a hardware consolidation that simplifies their development pathways significantly. This was a big week for Starship, even though it didn't fly. Sometimes the announcements move the program forward more than the launches do. Yay! You've reached the middle of the video. You made it. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for watching and liking the video. If you're among the 40% who haven't subscribed yet, and there was at least one video you learned something new from, it would mean the world to me if you did. It's free, and it genuinely helps more people find my channel. Want to make my world even easier? There's only one place you'd rather be: the Y Members Club on Patreon and right here on YouTube. Click the card or the join button right here under the video. You are the reason we keep doing this. Thank you so much. You rock. Now that we know what Starship's role in Artemis III will be, it's time to have a look at the rest of the mission. And let's not forget the astronauts. Artemis III's first component to launch is Blue Origin's demo Blue Moon lander. This test article has a special ability: it can stay in orbit over extended periods of time. A total waiting time of up to 90 days is acceptable. Then the 4 astronauts launch on the SLS aboard an Orion capsule and settle into a circular orbit. They chase down the Blue Origin lander, dock with it, and spend about 2 days connected to the craft. During this time, the crew will be floating through the hatch, powering up the lander and stress testing the life support system. Once all the tests are done, Orion will undock from the Blue Moon demonstrator, but the mission is far from over. In the meantime, a second lander, the demonstrator for the HLS Starship variant that we just talked about, will be launched by SpaceX. This is Orion's next target. Once the Artemis III crew has reached HLS, the 2 craft are set to dock and testing can begin once again on the same mission. This entire operation is one of the most complex crewed missions NASA has ever attempted. 2 landers, 2 dockings, 1 crew, all in Earth orbit. About 2 weeks. Then a splashdown in the Pacific. Fantastic stuff. We could do a 2-week marathon stream. Before we take a closer look at the hardware, it is time to have a look at the crew that NASA has selected for Artemis III, the last mission before a crewed moon landing. Just like Artemis II, Orion will be crewed by 4 astronauts. A 5th astronaut will train alongside the crew, ready to take over for one of the others if needed. The honor of commanding the mission goes to Randy Bresnik. He is a Marine Corps colonel, a test pilot with more than 7,000 flight hours. He's flown to space twice, and he's already commanded the International Space Station. So when something goes sideways at orbital speeds, his is the calm voice on the loop. Exactly the resume you want in the commander's seat. The mission pilot is another space-proven veteran hailing from Italy. Luca Parmitano is an Italian Air Force colonel and ESA astronaut with 2 prior flights. He also became the first Italian ever to command the ISS. In 2013, he had a moment of trial by fire, or in this case, rather trial by water. As he was in the middle of a spacewalk, his suit malfunctioned. The result? His helmet started filling with water. That must be one of the worst situations an astronaut can imagine. Being out in space and water starts to collect in your helmet. No, it's not like this, because you're in 0G. It's situations like these when you can see just what a special breed of human astronauts are. Parmitano was well aware that this issue could drown him in the vacuum of space. But he relied on his training and worked through the problem. He stayed calm, felt his way back to the airlock half blind, and made it inside. That's not a line on a CV, that is proof of how the man behaves when the worst is happening. The first of 2 mission specialists is Frank Rubio. He has a double qualification: Army Black Hawk pilot and a board-certified family medicine doctor, a pilot and a flight surgeon in the same seat. He holds the U.S. record for the longest single spaceflight, 371 days after a coolant leak crippled his ride home and turned a 6-month stay into a full year. Andre Douglas is the second mission specialist. He's the rookie in the team, the one who never was in space before. But as a test engineer and Coast Guard Reserve commander, his qualifications are unquestionable. By selecting him, NASA shows that it trusts its new astronaut class, and they want a trained engineer's eye on hardware that's never flown together before. This should be true for both landers that Orion docks with in low Earth orbit. And then there is the backup, Bob Hines. His experience includes 170 days across 2 station expeditions. Hines is training to step into any of the 4 roles if someone can't fly. It is the most thankless job in the building. Learn everyone's part, fly none of them, stay mission ready the whole way. Damn. At the same time, it shows how much NASA values his abilities and adaptability. In order to see Artemis III happen within the next year and a half as planned, both the astronauts and the hardware have to be flight ready in time. While the astronaut training program should not cause any concerns for the timeline, the hardware situation is quite different. Let's start with the rocket and capsule, where things look genuinely solid. The SLS core stage is at the Cape. The 2 big segments are mated together. 4 RS-25 engines, the old space shuttle workhorses, are going on this summer. Orion's crew module is getting bolted to its European service module, and it's flying a brand new docking system for the first time. The heat shield's been inspected and cleared. Artemis III will use a slightly different version of the Space Launch System. The biggest difference lies in the upper stage. Here, the ICPS, the Interim Cryogenic Propulsion Stage, will be replaced by a simple structural placeholder. Because you only need that upper stage to push yourself out toward the moon, and they're not going to the moon this time. This is especially beneficial as this ICPS is the last of its kind, already built and ready to be used. For the later Artemis missions, NASA will change over to a more capable second stage, a modified ULA Centaur 5. Using the already proven ICPS first leaves more development time for the Centaur modifications and, importantly, saves some budget along the way. Okay, so SLS and the astronauts look like all is going well, and I've already shown you the SpaceX side of things. But what about the other vital NASA partner for the Artemis program, Blue Origin? Blue's giant New Glenn rocket suffered what they called a significant anomaly. In other words, a massive explosion on May 28th. Their crews are ready to clean up the pad and start rebuilding as soon as the initial investigation is closed. Blue Origin says their Mark I lander's first unit will be ready to fly to orbit this year. NASA's framing was telling. It said setbacks are a learning opportunity and that NASA is stepping in to help. When the customer says it's stepping in to help the contractor, it is not always a confidence signal. NASA is relying on both SpaceX and Blue Origin to progress through all the inevitable trouble of development and testing. Offering its vast experience and resources to help out is the right way forward. This mission is right at the leading edge of space exploration, and this must be a cooperative effort if they want to succeed. The crew will also characterize the inside of the Orion capsule itself. This means that NASA wants to take the opportunity to carefully catalog all that is left inside the capsule, both as physical matter as well as radiation. And why is this important? Excellent question. When future crews bring back actual moon rocks, scientists can subtract out the background contamination and know what's genuinely lunar. And then there's everything else the NASA administrator packed in, because this presser was something else. He called this moment the start of Earth's first Starfleet. He pointed out that soon you could have Dragon, Soyuz, Starliner, Starship, and Blue Origin landers all crewed and in orbit at once. If you add China's growing fleet of space vessels, this is quite an impressive lineup already. Jared Isaacman teased another moon base event in weeks. To be honest, this speed NASA has picked up lately still feels a little surreal. While Artemis surely is the headliner at the moment, NASA has more excitement up its sleeve. The Nancy Grace Roman Space Telescope launches this summer, a milestone for deep space exploration. And then there's the most sci-fi sounding project of them all, a nuclear reactor-powered interplanetary spacecraft, assembled before the end of 2028, delivering a payload to Mars. Space Reactor 1 Freedom, or SR1 for short. NASA has taken humanity from looking up at the stars in wonder to reaching them. With the International Space Station and its global partners, it created our first permanent home beyond Earth. And now, it is turning the next great chapter into history, building a sustained human presence on another world. I'll keep tracking every piece of this as it stacks up, and then, of course, share it with you. And that's it for today. Smash that like button, subscribe for more. This is what fuels the algorithm, and this is how you can help us for free. Check out our epic shirts in your favorite Space Nerd store. Our all-time favorite Raptor engine design and countless others are there for you to explore. Click the card or the US or worldwide link in the description. And if you want to know how SpaceX is planning to build a self-sustained moon base in the next 10 years, watch this video next to continue your journey. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you again in the next episode.